and meditations of all our hearts be now and always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Our gospel story for today is the only miracle performed by Jesus that is recorded in all four gospels. And so this fact is a clear indication of its importance. And the gospel writers differ when it comes to the details. How many people were fed? How many loaves and fish were involved? But the important point, the reason why the four gospel writers included this story is that this story captures the essential truth about Jesus and the essential truth about God. The story of the feeding of the multitude reminds us that at the heart of the Christian gospel surely is God's unconditional love and God's generosity. One of the posts I've avoided in church life over the years is being the treasurer. I've had a go at most other positions, but I've not had the joy of being treasurer. Perhaps the biblical text that most treasurers will know by heart is from St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. You know what I'm going to say, don't you? Chapter 9, verse 7, the Lord loves a cheerful giver. Paul writes, you must give as you have decided in your heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for the Lord loves a cheerful giver. And generosity, it seems to me, is at the heart of today's reading from Mark's Gospel. It isn't food that all of us here today, to some degree, take for granted. You know, the cupboard is not bare, the freezer is not bare. We take it for granted. And all of us here today will leave this church, go home, perhaps go to the house of relatives or friends, or maybe now, yippee, we can go to the pub and have a nice Sunday lunch that we don't have to cook and wash up. After months of living in lockdown, there's nothing wrong with that. Food is often how human beings celebrate. It is how we often offer hospitality. It is been described as the sacrament of family and friendships. And bread and wine, of course, form the chief sacrament of the Christian church. When we come to the Lord's table, the altar, and receive the body and blood of Christ in Holy Communion. Yes, I know today you will only receive the body of Christ, not the blood. I hope that won't be reflected in a reduced collection. But you get my meaning. So in our minds, food is comforting. It's a sign of affection, loyalty, friendship, commitment. Think of your Christmas turkey or Christmas goose, a wedding cake, harvest supper. Food is something that should unite all people and not divide them into haves and have-nots. Now, surely the mark of any civilized society is how that society cares for those who are its most vulnerable members, its weakest members. And in this country today, in 2020, it is extraordinary that 1 in 5 people are living below the poverty line. And as I have found in the course of my ministry, for many people on low incomes, a sudden crisis, perhaps redundancy, benefit delay, an unexpected bill, can actually mean going hungry. Every day in this country, some parents will skip meals in order to feed their children. and people are often forced to choose between paying the rent and eating. And since the Macclesfield and Congleton area food banks opened nearly 10 years ago, they've given away tons of food to thousands of local people. And I have recently discovered that some of those people are living in this parish of Gorsworth. People from this village now dependent on food banks. When the lockdown began, as some of you know, Rachel and I put a box for food donations outside the front door of the rectory. And I must say it has been truly wonderful how many people have responded generously. And we've been taking donations of food to the food banks once a week, sometimes twice a week. And that's been terrific. And the people who are forced to go to food banks are not scroungers. I've been involved with food banks for some years now, and I know that the people who go there do so because they are truly desperate. As some of us will know, if you can't pay your rent or your mortgage for 1 month because you have no means, no income, no savings, often for the first month you can kind of struggle through, maybe with a bit of help from family and friends. But when you get to the second month, particularly the third month, there's nowhere left to turn unless you go to a loan shark. That means you quickly reach that tipping point where your life can go from okay to not okay, when you can find it difficult to put food on the table. And this impacts on children. I was talking on Friday to a young man married with a young son who is now in a very desperate situation, having been made redundant as an air traffic controller. You would not think, I mean, it's a highly skilled job, isn't it? Being an air traffic controller is a highly skilled, valuable job, and it seems absurd that somebody with that capability should suddenly find themselves in a desperate situation, being made redundant. And being made redundant because planes are not flying at the moment. And that person, that dad, is in the process of getting authorisation to go to a food bank to get some food because he's up against it. That is the crazy world. The world's always been a bit crazy, hasn't it? But that is the crazy world in which we now live. And an attitude of judgment and blame is not the way forward. I sometimes say to people, if you fell over in the street, what would you want? Would you want someone to come along and explain to you the nature of your mistake and how you need to be more careful when you're walking along the pavement? Or would you simply want somebody to come and help you get back up on your feet? For those of us who are Christians, we know, don't we, what God expects of us. Compassion coupled with action. And remember these words from Matthew 25. Jesus says, "For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to see me." And then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? Or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you? Or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king shall answer them, "Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me." Our Christian gospel, at its heart, has the generosity of God, overflowing, unconditional love, the gift of his life to us in the person of Jesus Christ. And the story of Jesus feeding the crowd, the hungry crowd, is a story of generosity. Today we are fed at God's table with the body of Christ. As we approach God's table, God's altar, and receive the sacrament of Holy Communion, the body of Christ, let's remember the old saying, what my grandmother used to say to me, you are what you eat. You are what you eat. That's how the gospel is meant to work. That slowly but surely we become a little bit more Christ-like each day. And when we sit down to eat later today, wherever that may be, let's ask ourselves what we will do to help feed the hungry, who are so much nearer to us than perhaps we once believed. Amen. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven.